Hey, welcome to another video. This time I'm going to be continuing on with my 1850s project. I've done the chemise, I've done the drawers, and next is the corset. Now, in the middle of the 19th century, women's undergarments went through some changes and everything got a lot more metal. Seriously. There's the steel cage crinoline, which I'll talk about when I get to, but a lot of the innovations in corsetry were more inclusions of steel. Now, again, I'm kind of fuzzy on the exact dates of when this shifted over. Some of the things that you see in corsets of this era that previously were not seen have to do with the hardware. There's more steel boning. There's steel grommets lacing up the back instead of hand-worked eyelets, and the front opens with a split steel busk, which makes the whole thing so much easier to get into. You still did see some support and stiffening from cord and baleen. These were more commonly used alongside steel in places where the wearer would want more flexibility, or in a corset meant for somebody who would be working more and needing that greater range of motion. The shape of corsets through the 1850s and 1860s is a very pinched in hourglass. I like to think of it like both the top and the bottom of the hourglass, they're almost like bowl shaped, like bowls. So you have a nipped in waist and the hips flare in such a way that it looks kind of extreme, but it's really a combination of the waist coming in and the hip section being cut in such a way that it has a lot of room for the hips to spring, is the term, hip spring, which is just basically the mass that gets pulled in needs to go somewhere, so it's given somewhere. The seam lines on the corsets from the 50s and 60s feature usually two gores on each boob, and the hips cut separately to allow for that spring. They're usually quite short, which, if you think about it, they don't need to extend long and low over the hips like you would see later in the Victorian era, because all of that business is going to be covered up by your massive skirt. They were seen in many colors, ranging from plain white to vivid red and orange. And the decoration was usually a little bit of flossing at the ends of each boning channel. This, hello family. Hello. Flossing at the boning channel, I believe, was where I was before I was so rudely interrupted. It both was a nice decorative touch and would be done in contrasting thread, and it served the purpose of helping to keep each bone securely in place so it wouldn't wobble around. I've seen a few examples that had a little bit of lace at the top edge. I'm going to be using the red threaded gored 1860s corset pattern. Out of all of the commercially available patterns I've seen, it's the closest to what you see in terms of shaping and seam lines. There are a few things though that, I think nervous is too strong of a word, but some things that I'm keeping myself aware of. The first thing is that these patterns are single-sized. I have it in hand now, and I've looked at it, and I get why they package them one size at a time. Each piece has a lot of markings as far as bone placement and seam allowances, which is wonderful, but there's no way that you could like do overlaid multiple sizes. Each one would have to have their own page. It would be ridiculous. And also with that, most people are not one straight size. My bust measurement is 2 sizes larger than the rest of me. So But I know what my body's like, so I just chose the smaller size, because with those bust gores, you can easily accommodate a little extra room just right there for the great tracts of land. And also, not looking forward to sewing those bust gores. It's very, very precise, very fiddly, and we'll see what happens. The final thing that's kind of circulating for me is just the trials of fitting a new corset. Because I feel like in the last two videos, you got to see when you're making clothes, you don't sew so much as you iron. And the theme of this one is going to be sewing is not hard, fitting is hard. So I'm gonna get going on the mock-ups. There's probably gonna be a bunch of them. Let's see where this goes. For my first mock-up, I like to use good old muslin and a few cable ties. This may not tell me much about how the finished corset will fit on my body, but I like to use the cheap stuff to get an initial feel for the length, how true the pattern runs to size, and any potential problem areas. As predicted, the bust gores are a big problem area. So this is what I have so far of the first mock-up. I just wanted to show it. That's so messy there. Show it while it's boneless and flat. And the reason why is just so I can show this, the hip. And that's what I was talking about. This concept of hip spring, that you reduce the waist here and all of that comes out here. That's how much it's supposed to flare out. I mean, in theory, I know what my body's like, and I'm probably going to need to take that in, because the kind of shapes that spring and flare a lot, those are bodies that are softer and fleshier, and I'm slim and muscular. So this is the first mock-up. I really hate showing my mock-ups because they're always pretty messy, but I think the length is actually good, surprisingly. Also surprisingly, I think the bust is going to be okay. The only thing I might adjust, there is a little room in the hips, but I think for now I'm going to go forward as is, because I suspect maybe once I get sturdier material and more boning, we'll have more shaping here, which will spring out the hip more. So we'll just try that. I'm going to do another mock-up in twill, and that'll give me a better idea of what direction we're headed in. Second verse, same as the first. I'm moving on to make a second mock-up in sturdier twill. This time, the bust gores are a big improvement, but still not perfect. Here it is, the finished mock-up. So as predicted, once I got a little more structure in there, all this, that was my cat, all this extra space got filled out. I think expecting in the finished product, obviously there will be more shaping, but I am ready to go. I know I made it seem like there was going to be a whole ordeal getting it to fit, but it worked with minimal fussing around. So that's all for this one.